morning, my dear students. Today we are going to study about a new topic, the Vedic culture. The Indus Valley civilization, which was destroyed by the superior invaders in about 2000 BCE. The Harappans, who had held their sway in India for a very long time, they had to confront those foreign invasions, and their mark was diminished by this invasion during the 2000 BCE. The Indus people could not withstand the fearful attack of the invaders. They ran away in all different directions. The invaders who destroyed the Indus civilization called themselves as Aryans. And the people who led a confrontation to these Aryans came to be called as the Dasyus, or the original inhabitants of India. As you can see here, the Harappan civilization had scattered to the northwestern parts of India, extending even towards Pakistan of modern day. They had such a wide spread of their dominion, but with the coming of the new invaders into India, their stay, their existence had been totally diminished. Who were these Aryans? Why did they come to India? When did they come to India? These are the different questions that we need to answer. Let's find out one after another. The Aryans entered into India through this Hindu Kush mountains called the Khyber Pass. Entered into India, penetrated towards the northwestern regions, and had a wonderful sway, had a control over the northern regions. On the Gangetic regions of Sapta Sindhu River region, they made their settlement. The reason of their arrival into India was for the sake of pasture. They had been leading a nomadic life, but in search of the pasture, they penetrated into India, established themselves in a very strong note in India, and with their coming to India, started the authentic history of this nation. So let us study more in detail about the Aryans. So this was a passage where they had penetrated towards India, crossing over these borders. Many people in group, they came over to India. And with their coming to India, definitely there was a distinct culture that they had started over. It had developed with the decline of Harappan culture. Around 2000 BCE, there was a new epoch in the making of India. To study about the Vedic civilization, we don't have much of archaeological sources, but we do have rich Vedic literature. With the migration of these people, though the local inhabitants of India gave them a tough resistance, but definitely they were not at all a match for these strong, well-built people who came from these different regions of the world. They defeated the natives, though they settled in the banks of river Sindhu, which is on the greater northern India. The entire region came to be called as Aryavarta. The Dasyus, or the local inhabitants of India, who had held their sway in India for a very long time, they had to confront those foreign invasions, and their mark was diminished by this invasion during the 2000 BCE. The Indus people could not withstand the fearful attack of the invaders. They ran away in all different directions. The invaders who destroyed the Indus civilization called themselves as Aryans. And the people who led a confrontation to these Aryans came to be called as the Dasyus, or the original inhabitants of India. As you can see here, the Harappan civilization had scattered to the northwestern parts of India, extending even towards Pakistan of modern day. These people were driven to the south. That was a real invasion of these Aryans. Well, in the ancient period, in this topic, we will be studying about all these in more detail. Origin of Aryans, the arrival of the Aryans to India, which we have already completed. The Rig-Vedic polity, yes, that is another most important factor that we are going to study in this topic, because based on their administration, based on their polity, which flourished in India in the ancient times, that was a great contribution. And definitely the life of social and economic structures in Rig-Vedic period is equally important. Their worshipping the Rig-Vedic gods also holds an high place in the history of Vedic culture. The early Vedic period, under these things we are going to study about the contents which is mentioned here. There was again a classification of Vedic period which was considered to be the later Vedic period. The things began to change in the later Vedic period. As we could say that the first and foremost thing, the polity and economy, how the Vedic society had existed, how the religion flourished in the later Vedic period, what was the contribution towards the literature, and what doctrines does it hold towards Hinduism is more of another important topic that we will be discussing in later classes. First and the foremost, let us try to analyze from where these Aryans entered into or came to India. Accordingly, there are many number of theories given by the historians. There is no single opinion which can authenticate the migration of these Aryans to India. There are a wide number of opinions given by various historians. According to a group of historians, there is one group of historians who believed that they came from Central Asia. According to the theories, it is believed that maybe they came from Central Asia and entered into India. This is one theory which is not accepted. This theory is not accepted. This is the South Indian part where the local inhabitants were pushed down. So they occupied in Tamil Nadu, Telugu region, Karnataka region and Kerala. Various theories of the original home of Aryans has to be analyzed. Let us get into that part as of now. As I may mention, various historians such as Dayanand Saraswati, Balagangadhar Tilak, Max Muller, Professor MacDonald, A.C. Das, Rajbali Pandey, Pandit Lakshmidhar Shastri, L.D. Kala, they have different of opinions regarding the origin of these Aryans. In the words of Dayanand Saraswati, he placed that the Aryans might be from the Tibet region. Balagangadhar Tilak placed his opinions, making a mention that Aryans might have belonged to the Arctic region. Max Muller, a German historian, he says that the Aryans might have migrated from the Central Asia. Professor MacDonald, he further states that Southeast Asia might be the original home of the Aryans. In the words of A.C. Das, he places his definition like, they might not be the foreigners, but they might be the indigenous people who belonged to the Punjab region. Such is the words of Rajbali Pandey, who further states that the Aryans might not be the foreigners, but they might be from the central India. Same in the case of Pandit Lakshmidhar Shastri, who states that Himalayan region could have been the original place. And in the lastly, in the words of L.D. Kala, we can say that he places his opinion as Aryans might have come over from, or they might be the original inhabitants of Kashmir. But difference of opinions have been placed by historians, but widely accepted is all about the Central Asian theory based on certain evidences. Based on certain evidences, the theory of Max Muller is admitted by the various historians. Well, the Vedic Aryans, even the theory of Balagangadhar Tilak is quite agreeable. He states that Arctic region was a central home of these people that is also accepted as a matter of fact. They stayed in this region. The entire Aryavarta flourished in later stages. After establishing their hold in the northern side, there was a many number of battles for the sake of existence among these different Aryan groups, who further were classified according to different dynasties, which is popularly called as the Battle of 10 Kings, which took place in India, in the ancient India, I mean to say. Well, settling down in the Indian Aryavarta region, they led a very nomadic life which had been so far got a conversion themselves. They reformed themselves towards the cattle rearing people. They later on became the cattle rearers, establishing themselves in India. So this is Max Muller, who believed that these people might be from Central Asia, which is the original house, and that was perfectly based on the language that was used by these people. Regarding the Vedic period, the chronology of Vedic period goes on like it was classified into two parts. One is early Vedic period. The approximate dates could be between 1500 BCE to 1000 BCE. And the later Vedic period, the dates have been placed in an approximate manner between 1000 BCE to 600 BCE. These are the dates given by the scholars. This is just an approximate date, and that's the reason it's mentioned as circa. Now, regarding the early Vedic age in India, this extended up to 1500 to 600 BCE in the words of Max Muller, as they had occupied the northern plains, and language which were started from the time of Aryans, and different languages of India were also being connected with these Aryans. As you can see here, different other languages also started from here, because the language that they used here was Sanskrit. The Sanskrit was the language that they used. Of course, this is Hindi, and Hindi is derived from the Devanagari. But Sanskrit is the word that was used by these Aryans, and from the Sanskrit, we do have many number of languages that existed in India. So, the richest contributions of the Vedic civilization people was towards literature, as it has been classified into various formats. The ancient Indian text, as you can see here, the Vedas, we have got Darshana Shastras, we have got Smritis, different Puranas and Itihasa. The portion of Vedas were again being subdivided into Samhita. Then we have got Veda Angas and Upaveda, the subsidiary Vedas. All these things comes under the ancient Indian text or literature, which was very much rich, which was composed by many sages over the period of time. Now let us discuss why they had written. These Vedas were composed for the sake of illuminating the knowledge in the minds of the people, It was for the better sake of the people to lead their life in a betterment in the society, to lead a prosperous life, to have a meaningful life. That was the main intention of having these Vedas. It's not a very small topic to be discussed. It's a wide one, but just a few things that I just added up over here. Now let us get into those Vedas first in the literature part. The Vedas were the sacred book of the Aryans. And from which language has it derived? Vedas derived from the Sanskrit word called as Vid, which means knowledge. And these Vedas are classified into four. They were composed into four Vedas, which are called as Samhitas. Already we had mentioned about Brahmana, Aranyaka, Upanishad, and later part called as the Vedangas, Upavedas, Darshanas, and the Epics. One after the other will deal more in particular in this literature. But first, let's try to analyze what is Vedas. Well, the Samhitas, under which all the four Vedas are communioned. It's a collection. The Samhitas are the collection of hymns, prayers, incarnations, sacrificial formulas, and Sanskrit, or it's a Sanskrit word of Samhita. Which are the four Vedas? The Rig Veda Samhita, which is considered to be the book of mantra. The Yajur Veda Samhita, which is considered as a book of ritual. Sama Veda Samhita, which was considered to be the book of the song. Finally, the fourth one, the Atharva Veda Samhita, the book of spell. Each book had a different roles in their writings. What is this Rig Veda Samhita? As we mentioned, the book of mantra. It is a collection of hymns, and Rig Veda is considered as one of the oldest of all the other Vedas. This probably might have been composed in the early as 12,000 BCE to 4,000 BCE. This has been associated with 1017 hymns, or it is also called as Sutta. This Vedic Rig Veda is compiled in about 10 mandalas and 8 akta, which is a division of these Rig Veda. One of the prominent note of this Rig Veda is, in this Rig Veda we come across with the holy mantra called as Gayatri Mantra, which is being recited by the Hindus. So Mandala 9th, the 9th chapter probably, is completely devoted to a Soma sacrifice. We'll deal with that in later part. It's completely devoted towards a Soma. Then Mandala the 2 and 7th are created by various other rishis or sages. 8th is composed by Kanva, and the 9th was composed by the Soma. 8th was also co-composed by a sage called as Angira. So all these collections of mantras were done by the rishis or sages. So the Sapta Rishis, what it's generally called as, some of the Sapta Rishis are called as Atri, Vashishta, Kashyapa, Gautama, sage Bharadwaja, Vishwamitra, and Angira. So the credit goes to all these rishis for having collecting of these mantras for various purpose. It was written, it was composed for various purpose. The second one, the Yajur Veda Samhita, and this is mentioned as the book of ritual. This book of ritual gave the valuable insight and detailed knowledge about how to perform the sacrifices and how to conduct the ritual. That was actually given in this book of Yajur Veda. In those eras, the Brahmanas performed the manual work in the arrangement of the sacrifices which were, and what were the ritual, what were the mantras to be recited, were also done by the Brahmanas. And that was classified into two parts. Krishna, Yajur, I'm sorry, three parts called as Krishna, Yajurveda and Shukla. And this format was in a prosaic text. This was in a prose format. And this was actually considered to be a guidebook for the sacrifices, and it had contained many prayers. The third one, which was mentioned as the Veda Samhita, the book of the song. It's a rhythmic compilation of many number of hymns for Rig Veda. It was a supportive for the Rig Veda. It has also been considered as a book for chant. It contains about 1549 hymns, and they believed that it should be sung at the time of Soma sacrifices. These mantras and the conduction of these sacrifices was done by a superior class of the Brahmins called as Udaktri. Samaveda does not have a original value. It has got a very little original value, and it has only 75 fundamental hymns. You understand? It has been regarded as it has just 75 fundamental hymns, which was again found in the Rig Veda part, and a special group of Brahmanas had composed it. Now let us get into those Vedas first in the literature part. The Vedas were the sacred book of the Aryans. And from which language has it derived? Vedas derived from the Sanskrit word called as Vid, which means knowledge. And these Vedas are classified into four. They were composed into four Vedas, which are called as Samhitas. Already we had mentioned about Brahmana, Aranyaka, Upanishad, and later part called as the Vedangas, Upavedas, Darshanas, and the Epics. One after the other will deal more in particular in this literature. But first, let's try to analyze what is Vedas. Another part of the literature which is considered as Brahmanas. And Brahmanas, they are prose text dealing with the sacrificial rites and ceremonies. This connects as a well commented on the meaning and many other themes. Among the Brahmanas, among the Brahmana literatures, it is classified into 7. Number 1, Aitreya Brahmana, Kaushtaki Brahmana, Tandya Maha Brahmana, Jayaminiya Brahmana, Taitreya Brahmana, Satapata Brahmana, and Gopata Brahmana. This is actually a text which deals with sacrificial rites and ceremonies. According to the Hindu traditions, on the auspicious ceremonies of any kind of housewarming, or maybe for the conduction of the weddings, or even though which is related with many auspicious ceremonies that are held, mantras are always been recited. So, all these things were considered to be a set of collection of the mantras in Sanskrit, which created a positive energy and was mainly for the sake of positive energy which created. So that is the main intention of these sages. So even today that has been carried on. Traditions and culture is not a new practice, or it cannot erupt on its own. These culture, these traditions are being contributed in the past, which the mankind have always carried upon and passing it to the later generations. So with all these things, let us move on to the different other concepts in the later